Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Knudsen.
Here.
District 1 Morset.
Here.
District 2 Brokaw. Here. 3 Bernard.
Here.
4 Weiland.
Here.
5 O'Malley.
Here.
6 Burchell.
Here.
I would like to present some awards first. And since we've got a few people here to get these, we won't keep them waiting. First is a proclamation for Amateur Radio Awareness Week, and we've got a representative of the Ham Radio Club is here. Whereas amateur radio operators provide emergency communications in catastrophes and are an important part of our emergency defenses, I hereby proclaim the week of June 22nd to June 28th as Amateur Radio Awareness Week. I'd like to make you aware of the Amateur Radio Field Day that will take place on June 28th to 29th. It's a 24-hour emergency encampment exercise that's held at the County Government Center in the community room. Anyone who's interested in learning more about ham radio and what their capabilities are, you'd be welcome to come. And then I think you meet once a week at the Government Center. What night is that?
Actually, our meeting tonight, it's once a month.
Once a month.
Monday of the month at the St. Croix County Government Center,
Okay.
the lower section near the jail.
Thank you. So if you'd like to come up, I've got this to give to you. And thanks for all you do. Next, I've got an award in grateful recognition for 19 years of service as building maintenance worker in the City of Hudson Public Works Department from October 30th, 1989 to June 2nd, 2008. Don Voorhees, come on up and receive our grateful thanks for all your years of service.
Yep.
Well, it's a pleasure to work for the City of Hudson, and when I first moved here, I really didn't have a job, and it took me 3 years, and I'd like to say thank you to Dennis Christopherson. I've talked to him before, I thanked him, but I wanted to, he was an ambassador to try to get me with the job here, because I worked for 15 years for the City of Appleton, so it helped, and I really wanted to get back into municipalities. And there's one thing I'd like to say is, my stepson's here, JJ, I'm proud of him. He's a Parks and Recreation manager, director, or whatever he may be, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I'd like to thank my wife for putting up with me for all the times that I came home pretty stressed out over simple things that really didn't matter. But most of all, I wish my daughter was here today to be here for this, but she's in a better place, and I just want to tell you, Allison, I love you. So thank you very much.
Okay. And next, I've got an award for grateful recognition of outstanding efforts and 20 years exemplary service as a member of the City of Hudson Police and Fire Commission for Tony Markowski. Tony was appointed April 19th of 1988. He was involved in the hiring and interview process for 5 police chiefs, 1 fire chief, and all of our current police staff but for 3. I think I heard it was 3, but maybe it's 4. And he served at various hearings and disciplinary matters conducted by the commission. And so I've got a plaque in appreciation award. Tony, come on up.
I'd just like to thank everybody that was on the commission and for all the good help that they let us have. And thank you very much. I sure appreciate this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll take comments and suggestions from citizens present. If anyone in the audience has comments or suggestions on any item that is not on our agenda tonight but could properly come before the council, this is your chance to step up to the lectern and speak. Is there anyone that has any comments or suggestions? I'll take that as the only comment. And we'll move on to the consent agenda items. Nancy, will you read the consent agenda?
To approve the public hearing in the regular meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2008. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $379,243.82. A detailed description is available in the clerk's office on request. To approve the change of location for Freedom Value Center to sell fireworks at 219 South 2nd Street, contingent on the surrender of the current permit issued to 210 South 2nd Street and the completion of the items noted in the fire inspector's report. To approve the request to barricade Sasha Lane at Namacoggin for a block party on Saturday, June 28th from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. To approve yield signs placed northbound and southbound on 6th Street at River Street with review of the issue in 60 days. To place on file the report of the Public Works Street Department, the Public Utility Commission minutes of June 10th, 2008, and the Hudson Area Joint Fire Board minutes of May 13th, 2008. That is all.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Roll call vote.
Morset?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Brokaw?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. Next item on our agenda will be number 6B3. Applications for operators licenses. Finance Committee recommended approval. You've got a list in your packet. Do I need to read all the names again? The list is before you. What's your pleasure?
Recuse myself.
Mr. Morissette asked to be recused.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item is resuming the Police Department K-9 program. At the Finance Committee, we had a presentation from Chief Jensen. I think this is a great idea. If you'd like, he can give you a brief version of his presentation again, but the idea is that we're getting a place held with okay. You want to give a 1 minute overview of what you gave us?
I can do it real quick.
Go for it.
What we're asking from the council is to restart the K-9 program in 2009. What we need to do is reserve a spot in the St. Paul Police Department training program for March 2nd of 2009. Before we can do that, though, we have to have a commitment that we will have a K-9 unit up and running. Currently, I have $4,600 sitting in our K-9 account I do have monies available that I can move into that account from other funding sources that will bring us up over $17,000. So I've got enough money to start the program. There is monies that will have to come out annually between $3,500 and $4,000 that would have to be budgeted into my budget for compensating the officer, besides equipment and vet bills and so forth for the dog. However, some of those costs can be taken up if we were to happen to get private donations, or if we should happen to get a grant either through like Milk Bone Products or from Penny Farm. So what I'm asking the council to do is give us the okay to go ahead and start the process of reserving us a spot with St. Paul Police Department to start up a canine program in 2009.
Are there any questions?
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6, review proposed Prospect Park Restoration Improvements Project and consider advertising for bids. This has to do with the old hospital site up at Prospect Park where the building has been removed. There's a need for grading, topsoil, and to turn that back into a flat and level lawn. The proposal carries an estimated project cost of around $40,000. The staff recommendation is to recommend advertising for the earthwork for Prospect Park with the funding to come from our 2008 bonding as well as some 2007 carryover bond. What's your pleasure?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Number 7, review bids and consider awarding contract for Lakefront Park Phase 3 Improvements Project. You have the bids for this project came in last week. There was some significant range between the bids. We have Chuck Schwartz here to answer any questions you have about this. The good news is that the low bid is considerably lower than what we had estimated. And the recommendation from staff and the Finance Committee is to approve the low bidder with no contingencies, except that we had discussion at Finance that will rely on Chuck to make sure that the specifications are followed, quality of the work is followed. It's going to take some oversight. Question?
When we talked about this on Friday, there were some questions about the low bidder. Have you had a chance to talk to anybody about this bidder, or are you going to do that as part of the ongoing project?
Well, to answer your question, I don't personally have any experience, and I couldn't find anybody in our office who's worked with them. I have had discussions, though, with the owner, Greg Urban of Urban Companies, and you know, he's a landscaper, and he's worked with quite a few reputable firms as a subcontractor, Kraus Anderson and the like, and talked to him about his bid, and he doesn't have any concerns regarding meeting our specifications.
Then I'll move for approval of the bid of $79,020 from Urban Companies.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes.
What was the original amount bid for just this work specifically?
It was, I believe it was $115,000.
So,
Construction.
so potentially, and I heard it in finance, and I kind of heard it in finance on this side, and your opinion, it was a little shaky at best that anybody's comfortable doing this. So I really do question us supporting the 79 when we had a bond for the second bidder, which was within reason. I realize saving money, but, you know, we've come a long way in that park with a lot of embarrassment, and I don't want to do that again. And I don't see a confidence in you about bidder number 1.
Let me say that, you know, in the bid process, you prepare a set of standard
Right.
specifications. And this contract has performance deadlines. It's got quality of work considerations. And really, we'd be on shaky ground to deny the low bidder unless we had some more concrete proof than the fact that we've never worked with them before.
You'd need, I mean, you can request references if you are concerned about it. I would, so that would be one option, not award it until you've seen the references. But without something, I think you'd need something more than just
I
that it's
also
low.
think, though, that you had requested those references, and to this date, you don't have them.
Yes, I didn't, I requested him at a late hour, so he didn't really have an opportunity. It is awfully difficult. I don't have any concerns with them. I just never worked with them.
No one in your office has worked with them. That kind of brings up a big question mark. Just my concern.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. The second part of this is to review plans for the Lakefront Park irrigation project and to authorize advertising for bids. This is number 8 on the agenda. Estimated cost of this part of the Lakefront Park improvement is $40,000. The funding source is from our 2008 capital bonding, and the staff recommendation is to approve to advertise contingent on DNR approval of the plans.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 9, application of E&F Holdings LLC for Class B beer and Class C wine license, doing business as the Corner Saloon, 131 Carmichael Road, Suite 106. This would be our last available Class B beer license. This is a restaurant without a liquor license, so that it has to have restaurant sales of over 50%. The city's maximum allowable of this type of license is 10 currently, and this would bring us up to the 10. The recommendation from staff was that we consider approving the issuance of the Class B beer and Class C wine license for the period July 1st to 2008 to June 30th, 2009, contingent on successful completion of the building and fire inspections. And at Finance Committee, we added the applicant needs to obtain a restaurant license as well. With that, Finance Committee recommended approval.
Are the petitions
They
here?
are. Would you like to hear from them?
Yes, please.
Cedric, you want to come up to the lectern, introduce yourself and your address, and tell us a little about your proposal.
Hi, I'm Cedric Ellingson. I currently live at 879 McDermott Drive in Hudson. Partner and I, Don Fowle, also a Hudson guy. We own Bows and Mine in River Falls. Both of us have been with Applebee's for about 10 years prior to that. Basically what we're looking at doing is at the spot that is previously been Ribs and More, is opening up a smaller, for lack of a better word, Applebee's type facility. Be beer and wine at this point in time because that's what's available, but it'd be a restaurant. One of the questions that came up earlier is, did we think we'd have a hard time being a 50-50 food to beer establishment? At River Falls, if you ask anybody in River Falls what's Bows and Mine, they'll tell you it's a bar. We currently run about 65 to 35% food to beer and wine liquor there, so I have no qualms that it would be more of a food establishment than a liquor and wine establishment at all. But if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
I do, Cedric. I'm referring to the memo that you wrote regarding your proposed project. Now, I recognize you wrote this memo 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
So some things might have changed in the interim, but you say here that you, this entire enterprise is contingent upon securing funding. In other words, you're still looking for funding to do this at the time that you wrote this.
Correct, I mean, and you get into a conundrum. Do you go to a bank and ask for money without a license, or you go to ask for the license without the money? I mean, it's a horse apiece. What do you go to first? A bank's not gonna go through a full approval process if you don't have a license to get the loan. I mean, so, I don't have any I mean, the banks that we're dealing with, we have a very good relationship with them. I don't have any doubts that if everything goes ahead, that we will have any problems with that, but it needs to be part of the process.
Catherine, if for some reason financing didn't happen or some other eventuality happened that they couldn't open, then is the license?
We've got an ordinance requiring that they, pardon?
It's 90 days.
Be open for business, continue, well, they can't be closed for, let me look at the ordinance. It's not open.
They have to be open for business.
Within 90 days of the,
Oh, within 90
90
days of
days.
the issuance?
No,
I don't
no,
think so. They
no.
can't.
If they don't open, or if they close for a period of
Right.
90 days, the license.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Are you concerned that we're giving away the license and that the process is going to be too time consuming?
I'm worried that we may be awarding the license to an entity that may never get built, you know.
Oh, well,
Now, I understand that we gotta have a little faith here, and so I'm not trying to hold Cedric up on that. It just seems like there's a lot of bridges to cross in the creation of this particular establishment.
let's hear from the owner of the, you want to step up and do the same thing, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Lon Fayette. I'm one of the owners of the building at 131 Carmichael. The space that Cedric is going into, that they're going to turn into the corner saloon, was initially approved or designed as a restaurant space. The grease trap and everything is in there. It's already currently approved by the state of Wisconsin as a restaurant. We're very comfortable with these gentlemen, in part because they're local businessmen who already operate a successful food and beer establishment. So if this were someone doing this as their first time, I would certainly share your concerns, but that's not the case here. We've got experienced local people with a facility that needs to be approved as built by the city, but the license won't even be granted by the city until it is built and approved. So we look at it as a very fast-track, simple, easy to approve from our financial end, given the track record of these gentlemen who ran the Hudson Applebee's for 10 years and who run a successful business now locally and just want to expand it into Hudson.
Thank you. I think I should have clarified my concern.
Just a minute here. Could we just hear from the city attorney?
We do have, it's got to be open and exercising your privileges, open for business for the sale of beer and wine in connection with the restaurant within 90 days after granting the license. So you do have a time period.
So would tonight be the granting date, or?
Today would be the granting date.
You know, Lon has asked me many times what we thought our date would be. August 1st was what we talked about. We're probably honestly looking at September 1st, so I think that still puts us within the 90 days. And once we have everything approved, I mean, it's not gonna take 90 days for the bank. Like I say, we're dealing with banks that we have a relationship with. We're not gonna go ask some bank we've never talked with and say, hey, can we do this? We're gonna go in and show them the proposals, and I mean, we'll know very quickly whether it's a yay or nay situation.
So then if I understand what you're saying is, after 90 days, they don't have a license anymore.
Well,
Anyone could come and apply for that license.
What it says, it gives the council the authority to cancel or not renew the license if its privileges aren't exercised within.
So we could come in
So it should
September and
give
say
you
we're
some
almost
comfort
there,
level.
Yeah.
and you could grant us that, or we could say, hey, you know what, we just can't come up with it. You're free to take it back at whatever point in time. But the 90 days isn't a deadline, it's a guideline.
All right,
It gives the council the authority to cancel the license if you're not open within 90 days.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. If we come in and say, hey, it's gonna take us 15 more days,
It'll be up to the council.
it'll be up to the council,
decide
but
at
at
that
least we'll
point.
be.
right. Okay, question.
So today is the granting day, and there's contingencies
Yeah.
on the license. And so, it's my understanding it's not going to be granted until these contingencies are met.
It's not issued. It's granted tonight,
Okay.
but it's not issued until the
It's 90 days.
contingencies are fulfilled.
Do you have a question?
Quick, a couple more for Cedric on a business points. What's your hour of operations? How many employees are you gonna have?
Hour of operation will probably be Monday through Friday, 11 to 11. We won't run it like we currently run Bo's till liquor closing time in the morning. We just don't see it as being a viable late night bar facility. The only thing that would be a little bit skeptical is probably Saturday and Sunday, whether we run a breakfast brunch, which we do just Sundays right now at Bo's, and we start at 9:30. So the only thing that might be different is a Saturday and Sunday 9 a.m. start. But 11 is probably, unless we see some other reason, the
How many-
closing point.
How many employees do you hope to have?
We typically, right now, we're at 20 at Bo's and mine. This is a little smaller facility. Should do about the same amount of business, but it should be easier to run because of the, so probably in about the 12 to 13.
Scott?
Yes. Lon,
Yes, sir.
your comments lead me to want to explain that my concern was not whether you felt comfortable with these two gentlemen or their business history. It was to have the conversation which we've just had, because I wanted you to completely and clearly understand, because you had so many bridges to cross, that you've got to do this in 90 days, if at all possible.
And we want to. So yeah, it's not a geez, let's get this, and then, January 1st, let's see what we can do.
I just wanted to avoid any, that you might at some point run into some difficulty, and then if you didn't know this, it would be a
Right.
hardship on you.
For my part, I'd say I think they'll be a welcome addition to Hudson.
Sure they would. Just be welcome in 90 days.
I still don't have a motion. All right, we don't have a motion yet, but we're ready
Move to
for one.
approve.
We have a motion to approve,
Contingent upon approval by building inspector and fire inspector,
contingent,
and restaurant license obtained.
I'll second that.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. License is granted with those contingencies.
So I hope to be able to issue an invitation for the entire city council to come down for a burger on me.
Oh! No.
Put that in the record.
It's an invitation you don't have to accept.
Item number 10, review and approve updated job description and authorize advertising for Parks and Public Works Director position. I asked that this be on the agenda because I felt that we needed to discuss it in the Finance Committee first to talk about the future of the Parks and Public Works departments. And I would break down the discussion into a couple of different areas or questions to be answered. One is, should those two departments be merged permanently? Or have they already been merged permanently? I believe that the council took action that was without a date in 2007 to merge them. When you read the resolution, it didn't exactly say that it was only for a certain period of time. But that's an open question. If we're not in agreement on that, we should have discussion about that. The second question is the status quo acceptable for the supervision and management of those departments? We give credit to our staff that have been running them, but there's also a bit of a conundrum in that we've got two union members who were put in a supervisory type position. We've never called them supervisors, we're calling them lead man. But that, I believe that'll only be able to go on for so long before the union is going to say that's not acceptable to the union. And so that's a question, is it not just aside from the union question, but for the overall good and the future of the department. It's a big part of what we do in the city, those two departments. And I think that it would be best if we had a full-time director in that, running those two departments. With that, I had asked Devin to create a position description and to take out the engineering component that had been put in it in recent years, where we asked for the Public Works Director to also have engineering qualifications. My feeling on that is really not workable. That, in short, if there are small engineering jobs within the city that can be clearly defined and taken out of the normal city engineer process or handling, and such that they would have been amenable to being done in-house, then they'd also be amenable to being bid out to someone else, and that we could get in the habit of bidding out certain projects if we're going to take them out of the city engineer. The problem with trying to do it in-house, I think, in my understanding, having delved into this for a while, you need to have support staff, technology, tools. It's pretty difficult to do as a one-man show, so really what you'd be creating is a small city engineering department, and I'm not convinced that that part works. So for what it's worth, my opinion would be to take the engineering out of this job description. But I'd go back to maybe the first question. Are we all in agreement that we want to have those two departments combined and leave them combined? We've done it during snow plowing. We're now doing it during the lawn maintenance season. And it seems to be working pretty well as far as the idea of having them combined. With that, the recommendation from the Finance Committee was what exactly, Nancy? Do you know? That we should bring it to the council so that all 7 of us could discuss this here tonight. If it needs to go back to Finance Committee, it certainly can. It's not in finished form at this point. We got some input from Denny Darnold, and some of our other department heads have expressed strong opinions about this. I think they're unanimous in the opinion that that we should fill a director position. I don't want to put words in their mouth. If you have questions or you'd like to hear from them, I'm sure that we could have that input. I'd also point out that when the 2008 budget was developed, funding for this position was included in the budget for this entire year, which is half over now. With that, maybe it'd be best to open it up to questions and discussion. Go ahead.
One of the reasons that I thought it would be good to have this discussion at full council was, from what we heard in finance from Denny and from some others, I think leads to the discussion that everybody here needs to hear. So I would like, if Denny or would like to come up, or anybody else, and kind of to speak to your point of how this director role fits with the other directors.
Well, for about the past year and a half, this issue's been on and off the table, formally or informally. And 3 department heads have continually almost pleaded to become involved in this if this issue ever came for consideration to the city. Jim Schreiber, Dennis Christopherson, and myself would be pleased to assist the Finance Committee and the Common Council in addressing this issue. There are things that Devin, as City Administrator, myself as Community Development Director, Dennis Christopherson as Water Utility Director, and Jim Schreiber as Wastewater Plant Director, periodically address in lieu of a Public Works Director assisting. That doesn't mean it necessarily puts an undue burden on those positions, but it does fragment some of the communication that occasionally occurs. And I think that's one of my concerns. You know, each one of us has our own priorities as far as departments, and I haven't said no yet to the Public Works Department, but someday I may have to, just from a priority standpoint. I would hope, and we understand this is a policy decision, that we can't dictate that a position be created. All we're asking for is an opportunity to have input to possibly, within the consideration of these job descriptions or the possible hiring, and maybe even to the point, if it goes so far as hiring, sitting in on interviews and so forth, that may assist the hiring process. So with that, but I've done a few things, I shouldn't say a lot, but a few things for the Parks Department as far as Prospect Park, Lakefront Park, other considerations recently, Public Works of Henry Road, some of the turn signals, public safety, and so forth. I'm pleased to assist with those. I'm just speaking for myself as a department. I'm pleased to assist the city with that. That's teamwork, and I think Jim Schreiber, Dennis Christopherson, and I, probably with the almost 80 years experience between the three of us here with the city of Hudson, we've always prided ourselves to be team oriented in our department considerations. But all we're asking for is an opportunity to assist. But yes, there are gaps, I think, with the present system that could be improved. Either hire a new director to try to fill those gaps, or you heavily reassess the existing system that's set up.
Thanks.
I've got some questions or some talking points on all three of the questions you brought up. Combining is ideal, but if it was fiscally possible, I'd like to see them both separated back to where they were. And as far as the status quo, I think they've done a wonderful job, but I think they're overtaxed. I think things are being missed. Parks are not being attended to as they should be. Their priorities are different. I'm assuming, we all know what assuming does, or assumptions, but your focus is public works. Why is it, and that's where your focus. If we come to you with a park question, why is that his priority, is kind of my thinking. I think you need to focus in on your priorities, just like Denny had said, with all three of them. And then if it wasn't possible to have two separate directors and or supervisor for parks, then I would rather see it combined than as is.
Okay, other comments?
I'd like to comment to address what Randy just said. While it is true that in the summertime, public works personnel will work in parks, and in the wintertime, parks personnel will help with snow plowing and work in streets with public works. You can tell by virtue of your 2008 budget, they are still two distinctly separate departments. They are not one department. And I agree with you that if a director were to be hired, I don't think we can hire two. So we would have to, of necessity, combine them. There may be some logistical things there that would need to be worked out. My concern is this, is that to hire a director for any department with benefits is going to cost, we don't have that determined, but I don't think anybody's going to naysay me if I say $70,000. Right. I don't think we have a $70,000 problem to solve at this point, and I would be loath to spend our taxpayers' money in anticipation of a problem that may come to exist. Now, I'm not in any way trying to imply that I'm not listening to what Denny just told us. I'm sure he's absolutely correct. They are taking up some slack, and I appreciate their doing so. The union situation where we could possibly have a grievance filed at some point because we have a union employee seemingly stepping into a supervisory role, I understand that as well. The fact of the matter is no such grievance has been filed. And as I say, we are anticipating problems which may actually occur, but have not yet occurred. And I don't know that I want to spend $70,000 now to cure a problem which is yet to arrive.
In the budget, I mean, I want to address, just if I could, with your indulgence, let me address the question about the budget. I think in the budget, by state law, there will be, even in a combined department, parks expenditures will always have to be segregated. So that really isn't, the fact that that's the case doesn't forensically mean that it wasn't the intention to blend these together. But let's address that maybe. I mean, Are there those here, I mean, I heard from you maybe that you don't believe they should be combined?
They should be combined if we find the need to hire a director, because we can only hire one and not two. If we do not hire a director, we are much better off with two lead men rather than one lead man, who would then have an awful lot devolving upon his shoulders alone. The system we've got, which has been operating for a year now, and as you know, I'm very closely connected with what we do in parks. Tom Zulli and I talk probably more than he likes, but almost all the time, almost daily. We work on projects together. We hold many meetings to work things out. And it's been working great. Nothing's broken. I don't feel a need to fix anything at this point. Now, maybe people know something I don't know, and I'm open to listening to that. But I don't feel like spending $70,000 of our taxpayers' money for a problem that we are having a discussion as to whether or not there is a problem.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess what I'm wondering is, what is the plan for long-range planning within those two departments? Who are we asking to do that right now? I see Tom out on the road a lot. Who's overseeing that? Public Works and Parks is a significant portion of our budget. It's sort of like saying we don't need a fire chief or we don't need a police chief. Why would we not think someone would be necessary to be involved in long-range planning and personnel issues? And I don't know. I'm missing something, but it seems like we're asking people who've been hired to do something else to slip into a role that we're just not willing to fill. And while we may not perceive a problem right now, there could be one down the road that we're not foreseeing, but it may be negligent on our part to assume everything is okay and let's just keep going until, fire starts that we can't put out. I don't know. That seems like a small price to me to make sure that things are running. No, to make sure that things are being done efficiently in those departments. When you ask people to do things they've not been hired to do, and no offense to anyone who's doing these things, but it's like any one of us stepping outside of our area of expertise. You're going to be somewhat limited.
Well, all I can tell you is that it's been operating like this for a year.
But
everything's been fine. And you're right, there may be a problem down the road, may very well be. When do we start taking care of that problem is the question that we're discussing, I believe. And when do we want to start paying for that?
I have one comment there. I mean, I hear you saying everything is fine, everything's moving along, but we've also heard Denny and Jim and Dennis saying that they're picking up some of the workload that is over and above their ability. Dennis, or not of their ability, but their time is invested in places that are outside of where they need to be invested. In finance, and Denny also said that the coming up with a comprehensive plan is going to take a tremendous amount of time, so he won't have time to donate to the other departments. So there is impact there. And there's also impact on the ability of a union member to have personnel issues or take personnel action against another union employee, which of course falls to Devin to take care of. So there are things that aren't working, that they've been spread out. So I think that was the comment earlier, that we need to look at, if this is going to be the plan, then how do we reallocate resources permanently in all the other job descriptions?
Sure.
Who takes on strategic direction planning?
And I have no argument with what Lee has just said. Again, my question are the issues that we're facing, is this a $70,000 problem?
The size of the budget is such that if we had, the right person in the job should be able to save us every year the cost of their salary, really. Or, and vice versa, mistakes can happen. There's a park grant that's still a thorn in my side. I hope we get it this year, but the DNR actually had a press release that they awarded us that grant, but the money isn't in our bank account, and that was $500,000. I don't think you can say that things have been working 100% running on all cylinders. Alan, any comments?
Well, I think it's time to combine the departments and hire a public works director, or a supervisor for that department, director. And as I stated in finance, or in the finance committee, might be also time to look at combining some other departments. That didn't seem to go anywhere, but if we could combine some of the other departments and maybe, again, it's a staffing issue, and whether or not we hire someone at a lower level then, whether it's in the parks or the public works. But I think there's a way to, by combining the two, we're gonna save some money. And it will be a money savings plan, not necessarily costing us $70,000, in my opinion.
Recommendation from the finance was to send it here for discussion. One of the potential courses of action that I had suggested was that after some discussion here, we come to a conclusion, are we going to have combined department? Because it's all contingent, it's all based on that. And I got to a point in looking at this job description where I didn't feel like it was worth fine-tuning every word of a job description until we're set as a group whether this is going to be two combined departments or not, because it will be pretty markedly different job description. So that's a decision. And then the second is, are we ready to move forward with refining this further, advertising and filling the position or not? I would suggest that we do. That's not the only course of action. I think we could go on like we are. I just don't think it's the wisest.
Can I ask,
Yes.
Devin, as the city administrator, kind of overseeing all the departments, what is your feeling for what you feel the city needs?
There have been times, as Denny's alluded to, where, we've all had to pick up bits and pieces of this, which, again, as Denny said in finance, it boils down to communication issues. Who's doing what and what's going on? Is it working okay right now with Tom? Yes, one concern would be the supervisory union issues, because that's me dealing with personnel. It hasn't come up. Will it come up? That would be my major concern, is that we have individuals right now who are in supervisory positions within the union, and that can be an issue.
What about the strategic direction of the city? I mean, how do you see that being handled? You have directors that are handling strategic direction for their departments. How does the strategic direction for public works and parks impact? I mean, where do you want to see that support? Do you need support in that area or not?
Well, ultimately it's a policy decision, but if it isn't done by a director here, it will have to be done by other people. And it will have to be delineated by you as a council. Devin, you're in charge of all the personnel. Denny, you're in charge of parks. By having the position or not having the position, that's a policy decision you guys have to do, but someone has to be in charge of the stuff. So if you don't hire someone to do this, then you as a council will have to say, you'll have to tell the other department heads what they're in charge of.
I just thought, as the city manager, you would have a kind of an opinion how you think it would fit.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to combine Parks and Public Works and create a director's position and then refer it back to Finance Council, if that's how you want to word the motion.
I have a motion and a second. And the motion, if we were to restate it, would be to combine Parks and Public Works departments, to create a director position, send it back to Finance Committee to refine that position.
Work out the public, all the direct bells and whistles.
Any discussion on the motion? Yes.
Would you be open to amending that such that it go back to a subcommittee, maybe of Devin, Dean, Denny?
Well, however, it needs to be tweaked, but
Okay.
the main.
I don't want to see it have to wait 2 weeks to come back to finance if there are discussions that can take place about the job description,
Sure.
and then come back to finance.
A subcommittee. Actually, a lot of it could be done in staff with Devin, some other.
I would just prefer keep it in staff, because that's what it's for, and then finance as the personnel committee.
Staff bring their best effort to finance on July 7th in 3 weeks.
Is that okay?
Okay, so with that being a friendly amendment, I take it.
Well, did we agree on something there?
Before we go further with discussion, let's just,
I don't want to go to subcommittee. The staff can take care of it, and then it should go back to finance for personnel.
Right, that's what I,
can you read back what you hear as that motion?
To combine the Parks and Public Works departments and create a directorship position description and have staff bring their recommendations to the city administrator, that it can be brought back to the finance committee for approval.
That right?
Yeah.
Further discussion? Yes.
I would say that we have this in inverse order. Nothing wrong with your motion. I think the motion should take place after these discussions that you just described, that Lori just asked for, occur. Because what we're doing is creating one department out of two and then figuring out how it might work. Let's figure out how it might work first, and then, if it seems to be a workable thing, create the one department out of two. I think we're doing it backwards.
But we've been operating that way.
No, what Lori is, and you are talking about, is having staff directors get together, figure out how it would work, combining the two departments. I think we ought to figure out if that'll work and how it will work before we make a motion or carry through on the motion to combine the two departments.
Lee?
I see what Scott's saying, to have the staff come to us with a recommendation that we believe it would work this way if we combine departments, and to take it as staff bringing a recommendation.
But he's asking us, Mr. Mayor, if I may, you asked us, we need to combine this because there was no end date on it? Is that correct?
Well, and now it's been my first week here, I read the documents on this. And I think there were two that were pertinent. One was a resolution by the council during 2007 to combine the two departments. And the other was a memo from the mayor saying that that all the Parks and Public Works employees would be combined for the duration of the snow plowing season, and it was sunsetted someday in March.
31st, yeah.
March 31st, which I then extended so that they would continue to operate in the same fashion during the lawn mowing season. Those two internal management decisions as to who would report to who, where would they report, who's going to decide who does what on a day-to-day basis, that was done through the memo originally. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the council action was already to combine these. Now, maybe the sense at the time was that it would be temporary. Either way, I think we need to bring that back to the table right now and make that decision before we go further. So I think
that's my motion.
That's the motion. I got that. Do you have any further comments?
no, that was what I was agreeing to, is combining the two. That's
The question about have we decided how it would work, I don't see that that's what staff will be discussing here. If we make the decision that we're asking them to create a position description for a combined department, that's what they'll be doing, not how will it work. You just got done, Scott, saying it's been working fine to have them combined, and it has worked. In some ways, we've seen synergies. I believe there are cost savings and synergies to having them together. You could only make the case that they need to be separate if you felt like the director's time is going to be too divided, loyalties divided, if you will, or focus divided, or that we can't get an individual that can really do both things appropriately. I don't believe that's the case. So
I think some discussion should be held on that before we create one department out of two and create a $70,000 expenditure for our taxpayers.
well, the $70,000 expenditure was budgeted this year. I mean, it was put in the budget with the idea of filling this position.
My comment earlier was because more of an ownership, so that the staff felt like they owned the decision to come back with a proposal, so that they could look at it from all aspects and say, okay, what is the best way to put it together? That was my comment. So, that's.
Well, to avoid seeming obstructionist, I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And one abstention. Motion carries. We'll get staff to work on that and bring it back to Finance Committee. Next item is from the Public Works Committee. Chairman O'Malley, would you like to go through these items?
Sure. In fact, we can combine three of them into one. First, Dan Ortner. Dan's here. Dan, would you come to the podium and discuss with us briefly the quotes for the waste oil burner at the east and west garages? Dan, has everyone received a copy of the paperwork that you handed out to us this evening? They have? Okay, good. Just to prepare you for Dan's comments, he's been very diligent, worked very hard on this, and he's gotten us good quotes. Now, you can't know whether or not you need to put out for bid at the $15,000 level until you get some sort of quote, so you know where you are with costs on these. Dan, would you explain what we discussed in Public Works?
Well, we had a little bit of confusion. We didn't know what the procurement policy really states. Is it 15,000 or is it 25,000 where it needs to go out for bid? We came to the conclusion also that we need to buy one oil tank, at least to conserve the oil that we have that comes in, so we don't put these furnaces in this winter and not have oil to run them. So I would highly recommend we find a way to buy one oil tank. The cost of one oil tank is $7,593. You can see on like the East Garage, Durson Manufacturing came in at low bid of $20,793. The bid we had before was from Rudbeck's. That's who I had originally intended on going through. After further review of a lot of this stuff, I learned a lot. And you have to be a licensed installer to do the tank, and you got to be a certified installer to do the lines from the tank to the furnace. The tanks have to be registered with the Department of Commerce, and they have to be inspected yearly. So I cannot put this stuff in, so that's why we have two different bids for certified installers to do this. I would recommend we go with the low bid from Durson Manufacturing. A total to set up the east garage of $23,793, and a total for the west garage of $27,293. If you look down below that total on both of them sheets, we can pay, the east garage, we can pay for this furnace and what we pay for natural gas in a little over 4 years. And I have some figures calculated there. We can save 10% of our heating cost. Last year's numbers were $6,077. 10% of that is $5,469. The life expectancy of these oil burners are 20 years. So over the 20-year period, after the estimated maintenance cost of $7,500, we have a projected savings over 20 years of $77,269, and that's on the east garage alone. If you flip the page, the west garage is set up the exact same way. Everything that we pay for natural gas in the west garage, in the last 4 years, we paid $21,796. That'll pay for itself in 5 years. So we have 15 years of last year's heat bill. I mean, this is all projected that there's no increase in the natural gas cost. But at $5,358, last year's cost for natural gas for the west garage, times 15 years is $80,000, $80,370. The estimated maintenance cost over 20 years, I projected at $7,500. That's a total savings of $72,870 for the 20-year period.
Thank you, Dan. The recommendation and the request from Public Works is this. Since these costs are clearly over the $15,000 minimum, and we must advertise for bids now that we know what the quotes are going to be like, we do ask that the council approve tonight the expenditure of approximately $7,600 to purchase one oil tank. These tanks need to meet certain state specifications. Our regular tanks will not work. So we are going to trade in an existing tank. We need to purchase one oil tank because we already have waste oil. Now, if we don't have a tank to store that in, we will sell it at 30 cents a gallon, but if we can put it through our furnace next winter, it's worth at least $1.50 per gallon to us in terms of heat. So we are well under the $15,000 minimum on this. My motion is to approve acquisition of one of the two tanks for approximately $7,600 and to advertise for bids for the remainder of the work that you see on the sheet before you.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. In discussion, let me just address the issue about our procurement policy, which seems to be causing a little bit of maybe confusion. It was brand new last month. By state law, there's a $15,000 threshold when you must advertise by state law. That's for public works improvement. That went up to 25, right? It used to be 15,000, now that went up to 25. So that really only applies to a very narrow band of what? Streets?
Well, if you're gonna be putting a new furnace system into a public building, that would be a public works.
Okay. So then that used to be 15, that is now 25. Now that's state law and that's not internal to the city, and we're bumping up against that. And when I first heard this with Dan, I said, well, get your best estimate. If it looks like it might be over 25, we really ought to be advertising and doing it that way. So if that's where we're at, was that your point, is because I thought I heard you say 15, but.
Well, I did say 15 because we did review the paperwork that Devin had given to me.
The question is, I was not aware necessarily that would be considered a.
Okay, we were going by the black and white that we had in front of us, which was 15,000.
Okay.
But in any event, buying these furnaces is $51,000 in total, so we're over the $25,000.
Right.
No matter what.
And Dean asked before, budget-wise, was it 15 or 20? What did we have in there?
In the bonding.
12 was what we had
12.
originally budgeted for one furnace, but the savings are so great that we've decided to look into getting two furnaces.
That would be the other issue, would be if we did this, where the rest of the funding will come from.
Yes.
If I could, before the rest of you chime in on this, I would suggest that where we saw significant savings in the bid we accepted tonight on the Lakefront Park project, which we bonded for this year for a total of $175,000. We don't have the bids in yet for the irrigation part, and so this might be premature, but I suspect that project could come in at least $20,000 or $30,000 under budget right now. Would you say that's right, Chuck?
Well,
The
it's gonna be
lakefront?
50. We had 175 and it was
Right.
at 120.
Yeah. I mean, we
Well, there's engineering in that too, so.
Oh, no, that's donated.
But right now, that's significantly under. It was in the same bonding for improvements that this waste oil furnace was, and I believe it would be a relatively simple thing for the council to do a transfer of those funds. I think we should pursue doing both these garages, stop buying natural gas from Excel, and start getting the free waste oil and burning it. So let's get the best deal we can and the best installation we can.
Well, and my motion agrees with you that.
So other
requesting
discussion?
Authorization to go out for bid.
Did we get any multiple discount on?
We did. Our original bid, that Rudbeck came out with, he was at, sheet here. He was at $6,300 per furnace. Going with this Durson Manufacturing, he was at $5,800 per furnace.
And the major difference between Rudbeck's and the other two that we've received quotes from is that Rudbeck's will not install. State law demands that this be installed by a certified installer,
Sure.
which both Durson and Black Gold Environmental are.
Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Just one question. I mean, this is kind of a philosophical one, but we're projecting savings out over 20 years, collecting how many gallons of oil per year?
About
6,500
currently, isn't that right, Dan?
Yep.
How mu, we collect 6,500 now. Your oil tank you're picking up is how many gallons?
2,800. I'd like two of them, one in each garage.
So you got an excess capacity of about 2,000 gallons that you'll end up selling each year.
No,
Oh,
we
no.
will burn that
Will
in
you
them
use it?
furnaces.
You'll still be able to use it.
Yep.
All right. The philosophical question is, in 20 years, how much oil will there be to
to recycle.
We're all going to electric cars.
Well,
You may be right, I don't know.
That's a point that's worth looking at.
I think the
I'm
issue
just
you
going
look at
off
is a
of-
4-year payback. That's what I look at.
After
Yeah.
four, we know that for 4 years, we're on target.
Yep.
If-
And that's with no increase in the price of natural gas.
Correct, and, right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Our next item is, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, that's.
Go ahead.
Our next item, under Public Works items, item 2 is the purchase of an air monitor for confined space entry. Tom Zulli is here and can address this issue for us briefly. Tom, do you mind sharing with the full council what we discussed in Public Works?
We just requested an air monitor for the Public Works Department because to be OSHA compliant, when we enter confined space areas, we need an air monitor. Currently, the city has a couple, and one in the water department, one in the sewer department. It's just very difficult to use theirs when those are being used at different times, and several times during the day, we need to monitor the confined space that we're into, so.
Good. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I move to purchase the Micromax air monitoring device, the lowest of the 3 quotes we received from the company Viking Safety in the amount of $1,765.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Oh, wait a minute.
Aye.
Do you have a comment before we vote?
Well, my only comment was, all our other 2 are constantly in use, so we need a third one.
Well, there have been occasions when they are unavailable to us and we need one. This is mandated by OSHA. We cannot send an employee down down a drain without an air monitor. And we've got to have an air monitor. It's just as simple as that.
Sure, I was just, you've got if we had 3 of them, it sounds like
Right.
the other 2 are constantly in use, so you need a third one.
Yes, we do need a third one because there have been instances when we have not had one available.
And so we can't send an employee, which
You have to
backs up our
stop your
job.
work. You cannot go down.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item, Scott.
The next 3 items, items 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to combine into one, if you please, because they all have to do with roofing and leaking of roofs and window repairs that we need to do. On City Hall, we need to repair the roof. These roofs have basically, in most cases, come to the end of their warranty period. We do have quotes that you can see before you on the issue sheet. The roof repairs are going to cost more than the $20,000 we have in the 2008 bonding for City Hall. That includes clearing up the problems with the skylight windows on the 3rd floor because they've deteriorated. They're wood. They've deteriorated over time. They're approximately, I think, 19 years old, Tom, or 17 years old. I think they're 17 years old, and because of our very difficult climate, which is very dry in the winter and very wet in the summertime, plus melting and refreezing of ice in the wintertime up on the roof, we do need to look at cladding those so that we don't have wood exposed to the elements anymore. We're talking over $20,000, so we need to take this to finance to authorize going out for bid. Same situation pertains with the roofing on the municipal building. It's out of warranty. It does have some leaking problems on a regular basis. We've made temporary repairs. These are membrane roofs, and they just go after a period of time. And we've been spraying urethane foam that's on there. We need to redo this roof. It's going to cost money that we don't have. We're going to have to look for short-term financing or some other funding source, and we're going to have to refer that to Finance Committee for that reason. And the Public Safety Building across the street from us that houses the Fire Department and EMS has exactly the same situation. It's a sprayed membrane roof, urethane foam again. We need to replace that roof. The Fire Department has different financing sources different funding sources from the different municipalities. We need a finance committee to review those and to make a recommendation to the full council, because once again, this is over $15,000 and will have to be put up for bid in any event. So my motion is to recommend these three to finance, to come back to full council with a recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Our next item is a request of the St. Croix Rowing Club to construct temporary storage building, and that is a misuse of the word building. It is not a building. There is no foundation in the ground. There is no permanent structure. It's actually a tent. It is a canopy that will be held up by steel supports that will not be driven into the ground. There will be nothing below grade. They'll be sitting on their own stanchion platforms that'll be held in place by weighted bags, basically. And they are looking to put this up as soon as possible. They have permission from the Erickson folks, their building adjoins theirs, to put this up next to their building. Now, the problem we have with this, or possible problem, is that they want to take down some trees. And while we've recommended to them, and they've assured us that there is no problem in the way that they will cut down small growth trees in a north-south orientation so that they're not opening up some vista to the river, so you will not see this from the river. We still, in our recommendation, requested that Tom Zulli contact the DNR, because this is in their area, and we want to make sure that we're not cutting down trees that would cause a problem. So the resolution or the recommendation from our committee is to approve this contingent upon an okay from the DNR and removal of those trees, and an okay from our city attorney that since this is not a permanent structure, we don't need additional insurance. And we don't know the answer to that until Catherine checks into it. So that is the motion to approve contingent upon any need for additional insurance, and also an okay from the DNR on cutting down a few trees.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor? Yes, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Ask the insurance company, not the attorney, otherwise we gotta get a bill from her.
No, I just mentioned to Devin that he should ask the insurance company.
Oh, okay. See, there's our legal opinion right there.
There you go. You got that one for free because she's already here.
He's getting paid for sitting here.
Other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Public Safety Committee. Item number 3, request of Pat Colton to erect a fence at 804 Vine Street. Chairman Wyland?
We had a long discussion on this one in our public safety meeting. The motion that came out of public safety is to recommend it upon consultation with Catherine about any legal issues there may be in this area. David asked to have the area staked to verify it, and the fire department to verify based on the plans. The original plans we had weren't detailed enough, so we've been supplied with more detailed plans as far as exactly where those fences will go. The fire department did come back and made a comment that the original concept where the fences would go would dramatically limit his access. This new plan, I think his comment here was that, oh, you're here. You want to talk to it?
They've asked to erect a fence in this area. Our pre-incident plan for that particular homes right there was to make access off of 9th Street. Our water supply is off of 9th Street, or our best water supply is off 9th Street right there. The fence would could slightly hinder our access there because of the right corner trying to get into the property and where the actual property corners are. But we still can get in there. We still will be able to make access to that property from where the last proposed drawing was, and I re-looked at it, so.
Okay, so you're okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Jim. The, let's see, is there anybody here who would like to speak to this issue? I mean, Pat, do you want to make any comments?
Well, do you have a committee recommendation?
The committee recommendation is based on what the fire department had to say and what, if Catherine had any comments on it. If there were no issues with the fire department, no legal issues, our recommendation was to, and then have the surveyors stake it. We didn't see any other issues with it.
I'll take that as a motion
Second.
of the committee recommendation as presented in the issue sheet.
Yes.
And second.
Yes,
And now
now.
I'd like to hear from you.
Really, with what you have here is a private driveway accessing this house. Actually, the main legal issue I had was fire access for a rental property, whether there's some commercial fire code that would require a certain width or something like that. I did talk with Dave Krupich, talked with Jim Fry and David Gray. There is nothing that would require a certain width of access for a rental property. So with, basically your concerns under the ordinance are public health, safety, and welfare. Without any, code that would prohibit it, even though access is maybe less than what it is without the fence. But the fire department's okay with it. I don't see any other legal issues.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second of the committee recommendation. Further discussion?
Question.
Yeah. Are you calling the question?
Call the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That moves us on to unfinished business, update on projects. Chuck Schwartz, city engineer. Tell us about the triple turn lane and when it's going to be done.
Well, in regards to the triple left turn lane, on Thursday, they did test the existing sign base, and it was deemed suitable for the new sign bridge. And their plan now is to get in there on Wednesday to allow city staff some time. There's a couple, now that we know exactly where that sign base is going to be, there's some signaling wires that have to be adjusted. And so once that base is poured, then it'll sit a week as the concrete cures, and then they can get that sign base up. Couple other items of note on my engineer's update. The private developments at Grandview parking lot, the theater, and the St. Croix Eco Water will be coming off this because we've completed our closeout paperwork on those. And Stage Line, there's one minor issue left, and so that one will shortly follow. So we're whittling this list down there to get a lot of these long-standing projects closed out. Also, in regards to going back to the public improvements, now that we have Phase 3 project awarded, and with the lakefront wall project being delayed just because of the high water level, and as well as those irrigation bids coming up, there'll be an opportunity here for some revised or better coordination. May be possible to delay the path paving to better coordinate with the park improvements, if that makes sense. And the irrigation will follow you want all the trees and everything installed prior to that irrigation work being completed. So that'll all be scheduled between us and parks. There was discussion at Public Works regarding Hanley Road pathway improvements and how is that going to be scheduled with the Crestview Drive Mill and Overlay project. And I did put together a memorandum. The way I'd like to see it, or I'm suggesting that the project proceeds, is open bids on July 3rd for potential award consideration on July 7th. And that would allow construction to begin the week of July 21st, but more than likely the week of July 28th after project contracts are processed. And the goal here would be to get the majority of the pathway installation completed at the time Crestview Drive road patching that work is being completed. Because the milling and the patching of the road is going to take up approximately a month to do before they can get in there and actually do the paving work. The alternative would be to just outright delay the Hanway Pathway Improvement projects until it is paved. Crestview is paved, but I don't want to pave a pathway that late in the year. I'd rather see it done now, not only for use of your community, but it just also gives it some time to cure and to set up prior to winter.
Randy, you had a question?
Well, I'm just, whenever I look at this memorandum of our projects, I'm in awe on how many delays we continue to experience, and it's really frustrating, and I don't know if I should point that at your engineering firm or whatnot. There's a lot, I've just been disappointed with the delays, the continued delays, the overhang of the street signs up on Crestview and what Gateway is it? Is there some reason why? I mean, I understand the testing, I understand that, but it just seems like everything's getting pushed back, and now you're looking at an October 3rd completion of Crestview Drive. I mean, it just seems like we're pushing things further and further off.
Well, in regards to the original, yes, we do have some responsibility as far as, the triple left and that sign bridge. The lead time on getting that sign bridge was such that the original project schedule was thrown off because they couldn't get that sign bridge fabricated until winter. Didn't come up until the spring that, the original plan was to install a new sign base that was to go adjacent to the existing sign base, because neither the city or WSDOT or anyone seemed to have plans in regards to that existing sign base. And so the intent was to install a new sign base. And once we decided, well, that wasn't exactly a good route to go because of some of the disruptions and how tight that was going to be, then we got into the mode of, well, let's test this thing, and that went back and forth between us and everyone else. And so, yes, it's happening. It's delayed a lot later than I would like to see it as well. You are correct there.
Obviously, I'm not an educated engineer, and I would just like to see a little more due diligence in getting these things to us on time instead of time after time saying it's not ready and pushing it off to the next week, to the next meeting.
Well, and that's, you did it. I'd like to address if any concerns you have about that Crestview Drive Mill and Overlay project. Originally, there was because I don't believe, we've basically followed the schedules and, so I don't think we're, I think the Crestview Drive Mill and Overlay project has followed a logical path, and we haven't created any delays in there that I'm aware of.
And the signs, you're saying will be up on July, or what?
Well, a week after it's installed, the sign base is cured, and then they can install it. And so that's what the contractor's telling me. And I've expressed to him more than once, the city's desire to get this done and completed and put to use.
Every project we have, you should be expressing that.
Yes, you're right.
Other questions, Scott?
It seems that we've actually moved into agenda item B instead of sticking with just agenda item A. And there's some housekeeping that needs to be done with agenda item B, which is to review the plans and specs for the Hanley Road Pathway Improvements Project and to authorize bonus Drew for advertise for bids. At our last meeting, I moved to delay, and after some discussion that you heard from Tom Zulli, who supported that position.
Well, let me interrupt you here for a minute.
Yeah.
Are you moving on to item B?
If we.
Well,
yeah.
let's finish item A first. Are there any?
We're done, I'm sorry.
Are there any other questions about the update? Yep.
I just have one question about the number 6, the Nye Street and Aldrich Avenue storm sewer. I've had comments from residents saying, when is the sod going to be put in? And every meeting, I see minor punch list items remain. What's the status of that project, and when will it be finished? What's left to be done?
They've fixed all the defective curb, and all of that's good. And so really it just boils down to the sodding and correcting that, and they've corrected about half the sod.
And the
And
rest
so we
will
are
be
put-
done when?
Pardon?
And the rest will be done when?
Well, we're pushing them, my inspectors tell me in the next 2 weeks. Again, they have to come in there and do that, we have to review it, and, you know, we are working with the homeowners, and per the suggestion of Councilor Morissette, you know, we did drop notices into various people's mailboxes or
I think 2
in their
months.
door, just to let them know.
2 months ago, I'd asked him because I had a question from one of your constituents
Yeah.
about the sod work. So,
And some of that initial, it didn't start right away in the spring, just because there's
Right.
some delays in the availability of sod.
Okay.
Any other questions on the update on projects? All right, item B, well, let me make one more comment in regard to the Crestview Drive Mill and Overlay project. That's going to be a big project.
Yeah.
One of the biggest that we've done in a few years. And one of my concerns is that we maintain smooth traffic flow, and we've talked about that. We're going to talk about that some more here in this next item. I suggested that on the east end, where it's most congested, that we should offer to them that if it makes financial sense to them, that doing part of that at night would make a lot of sense from the standpoint of traffic management. There'd be a lot less traffic. Part of the issue on these is our desire to get it done and get it done fast has to be balanced a little bit with the cost. You can write a contract that it has to be done in 2 weeks if you want to, but you're going to pay for that. These are usually done as summertime projects. We do our bonding in the spring, which we did in April, and bid process, and then it's a summertime build-out with, as you heard from Chuck, he's not confident in laying pavement after a certain set date in the fall. We have seen it snow in October and so on. So that's kind of the balancing act. I think we're still on a good schedule to get this done this summer. So with that, item B, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, Scott, and I'll let you try to pick up where you were.
I am going to move that we rescind our action of 2 weeks ago to delay the Hanley Road project, because that pathway project can be ongoing, according to Chuck, while they're doing the curb improvements, the curb and gutter work, and the milling on Crestview. And cars can drive on milled pavement. That's not a problem as long as we protect the manhole covers, which will suddenly be 4 inches above the pavement. So I move that we rescind our action to delay, our action of 2 weeks ago, to delay the Hanley Pathway project, and then we authorize BRA to advertise for bids for that project immediately.
Well, that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
authorize the bid when?
Now.
For Hanley.
Advertise now.
Advertise for bids. Open the bids, award bids on, we got the bids on July 3rd. Our July 7th, which is our first meeting in July, we would award bids on everything, Hanley Road and Crestview, all at once.
And if you remember, that was our plan going into our last meeting, that we would do this, we'd get it all together, and then we'd look at whether we need to reduce the scope of the Crestview project because of cost. And our plan was, let's get all these bids together, let's make a decision July 7th. That'll still work. Like, we delayed it out of concerns over the traffic, but that delay hasn't hurt us really at all as long as we decide to go forward right here. We're still back to the original plan without any problem.
We haven't missed a day.
Haven't missed a day. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That takes us through to new business. At our last meeting, I suggested 2 changes to the code. One is in Chapter 124, Section 5, Sub I, regarding direct sellers at council-approved events. And the other is Chapter 150, Section 10, regarding application for special events permits. The rationale for this came out of discussions that I had with city clerk and with the applicants. It's very difficult, that our ordinance is cumbersome and difficult for well-meaning people to follow. And as such, for the first part, on the direct seller part, I found that I had to waive the code, and I found that the past practice of Mayor Bro had been to waive the code for people who were unable to comply with the code, and that had happened. Yeah, that was happening. You didn't know about it maybe, but that's what's happened, because the people, like for example, the situation that happened was for the car show that happens over a block to the north of here, and the block is closed and they have the car show. And we had a group from the school who came and applied, but they had missed a deadline or some such thing. And so my suggestion to streamline this is that we change it so that rather than the clerk getting a list and the council approving the list and so on, we simply approve the event, and then whoever that permitted event is, I guess we're calling it the permittee, they will keep the list of who's going to be allowed to sell at their event and make whatever inquiries into whether they're suitable to sell at the event or not, and we'll basically turn it over to them. And that's my suggestion. I asked the chief if there have been problems with direct sellers, and the answer is no, or very rarely. Not in this circumstance anyway, where it's associated with a community event. The main issue seems to be, do we have their name and address so that if there's some issue we could track them down, and we'll still have that control here. So that's the first one. The second one regarding the large assemblies. The large assembly ordinance was written, and you've got the language before you. The way that we've interpreted it is that applicants such as the Spirit and the St. Croix applying for a new event this fall had to go to first well, I don't know where they started first, but they've been to Public Safety Committee. I believe they've been to Public Works. They've been to the Parks Department. They went to a committee meeting and did a whole entire proposal to each of these. When my reading of the intent of it was that there'd be thorough staff review, that it would come to the council on a timely basis, I believe, isn't it 30 days? 30 days. It was 20 days. And we were having a hard time getting all the committee meetings in. And it was very cumbersome for the applicant. And so my proposal is that there be thorough staff review, ideally that the departments could get together maybe in one room and hear the presentation, come up with their recommendations to us, we would hear it and we would decide and try to make our decision within the deadline. So those are my recommendations.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
We have a motion to suspend the rules towards adoption of ordinance number 5-08. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion about suspending the rules? Roll call vote?
Morset?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Roll call? Yes. O'Malley?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Burcham?
Yes.
Motion carries. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution number 5-08.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance 5-08 to be adopted. Is there any discussion?
Can I just make
Yes.
comments?
Yes.
I just want to point out, and I shared this with Dean before he brought it to the council, on the section 124-5, this will treat applicants for, or direct sellers differently if they're connected with a special event than if they're connected just individually looking for a direct seller's permit. Currently, for individuals, they're required to show that they have a seller's permit, which is the state's way of making sure sales tax is paid. The city is not required to police that, but you'll be treating the two differently. And there may not be a good reason for treating the two differently. So you may also want to look, either require seller's permit information on this list that the special event person supplies to the city, or delete the requirement also from the direct sellers. That's just one issue. It's not huge, but I just feel I need to point it out to you so you know that it exists. On the time frames under the second part of the ordinance, there are constitutional implications or ramifications of those time frames. I pulled a memo that I did when this ordinance was adopted. Unfortunately, the courts never say X amount of days is constitutional. What they have said is they've found an ordinance that required 45 days as unconstitutional and considered that the municipality wasn't overwhelmed with applications and so on and so forth. And it's not enough of a reason that you only meet monthly. That's not a reason for giving any particular length of notice. The court specifically said you can have extra meetings if you need to. I think if someone comes in and says, you know, we'd like to have this done, well, you just need to know that the timeline, someone may challenge it. I can't tell you for certain. It's not 45, so you're less than 45, so you're good there. It's no guarantee, it's just an issue.
One of my questions would be, I'm aware since the adoption of the large assembly ordinance, has anyone met the 20-day deadline? Have we ever given an approval in 20 days? We certainly haven't done it with the Spirit and the St. Croix. I mean, we didn't come close to 20 days.
No, we encourage, I mean, usually these have been primarily people who are within the city system, let's say, not the actual municipality, but they're familiar with the process. And so they've been encouraged to submit them early because of the committee process. But someone who comes from outside may not be aware of that, and so they may not submit them early like that. I just think if we're faced with a situation where someone needs a decision in less than 30 days, you may have to look at what can be done. If it can be accommodated, I think every effort should be made to accommodate it. And actually with staff review, not successive committee review, it should be much easier to get it done in a timely fashion.
Would you suggest that the change from 20 days to 30 days and 5 days to 15 is inappropriate?
Well, like I said, there's no magic amount of time, except all we know from the case law is 30 days or 45 days. A court in Wisconsin found was unconstitutional. So I think you're okay going forward, but if someone's pushing it, we may need to look at that.
Any further discussion?
Just one question.
Yes.
On the 124-5 on the exemptions, so the permittee is not required to look at sellers' permits, or they
Not
just have to
under
provide?
this.
Okay. Just one.
If you wanted to add that to make it consistent with another section of our code, which is about 6 pages long for if you want to be a direct seller in Hudson, what you have to go through to be a, what would it be, licensed direct
Permitted,
seller?
just
A
a-
permitted direct
just a
seller,
permit.
which you can take it to the bank, that a lot of the direct sellers in Hudson have not gone through that process. But that's just one of the things that we would check to make sure that they're paying sales tax to the state, or that at least they are registered with
Yeah,
the
that they
state
have a number.
as a seller, and they have a number. If you'd like to make that consistent, that could be added in here where we've got the list that the permittee shall provide the city clerk with a list of approved sellers, including name, address, business name, items to be sold, and state seller's permit number. I'm not certain that we have to become the policeman for the state.
I'm not saying you do, I'm
Yeah.
just saying it's a consistency issue.
Yeah.
Would that then eliminate people like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and people who aren't direct sellers that would want to sell at these events?
There is an exemption from the direct seller law if you're associated with a charitable organization that meets certain qualifications. There's
Oh, okay.
there's some detailed specific exemptions.
You could put seller's permit number if applicable. I mean, obviously, if someone doesn't need that number.
All right.
I'm not trying to complicate things, it's just, there is an inconsistency.
Barring a move to amend this, we're about ready to call for a vote. Going once? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Ordinance is adopted. Next, Mr. Lee Wyland has been working hard on the Ad hoc Facilities Needs Committee with some department heads, and you've got their final report, and we promised 15 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we can get, if we can get it up on the screen. Everybody has a copy of this in their packet. We've,
You take as much time as you want.
okay. Get it up on the screen. I wanted to say a little bit about how we came to, what the process or the methodology we used to come through this. One of the, oops, do I need to do the screen thing? Hey, here we go. All right. So this is my pretty picture at the front of it.
That monitor is not working, so I don't know if you guys want us to do that.
The purpose of this committee was to do an internal due diligence on the needs of the 3 departments, police, EMS, and fire. And what that meant was there was a lot of ideas out there about what we thought was needed. Each of the departments had an opinion of what was needed. And our job was to get together and to say, okay, we've talked about our needs. Let's put some substantiation, some information behind them to say, are these real needs? Are they just thought about needs? Where is there a basis for what is being talked about? And then to come back with some ideas for moving forward to fulfill those needs. That's what we felt was our purpose. Our methodology was to determine the findings of the report. The committee, we did a physical walkthrough and evaluation of each facility, a review of all on-site and off-site square footage and what's being used today. So we asked, where is our equipment? Where is it being used? Is it here? Is it someplace else? How much space are you using inside the building, outside the building? Trying to get an understanding of where all our pieces were, because they're not all in one building. They're spread out across the city. The next thing we asked was, we did a historical review of each department starting in 2000. We talked about what space was being used in 2000, what was being used in 2001, 2002, what happened as things grew. How did the population service changed since 2000, the last 8 years? How do the calls to service, how has it changed? All to get an understanding of what is growth looking like, what is it doing with our equipment, what is it doing with the number of people, and how have we been accommodating the growth? Because we have been growing, and we have had to accommodate the size needs. So the question was, how have we been doing it? Again, to get this basis of understanding, how we get to where we are today, and then what do we do moving forward. You know, well, yeah, I'll move forward. A review of the city growth projections, their impact on each department. So Denny provided us with the population growth back from 2000 all the way out to 2018. Our findings for the police department, this is, what I've got in here is a dramatic summary of what's in the report. The report is a lot more detailed. Population serviced has increased from 2000 to now from 9,133 to 11,907. Projections show that they will increase to 15,500 by 2018. Calls to service have increased from 6,200 to 11,000, almost 12,000, pretty much doubled in the number of calls to service. We expect that to increase to almost 24,000 calls to service by 2018. Number of officers, we originally had 5, we increased it to 21 is where we are today. Based on the growth, Chief Jensen has said we're probably looking at 34 officers by 2018. There's a statistic that says how many officers do you need per population to service the population. As the population grows, you need more officers to support that population and the number of crimes. Took some pictures. You know, they say pictures are worth 1,000 words, so I figured I got at least 15,000 words in the next few slides. Up on the left, you see the police department itself, the exterior. Down below that, this was a very important point. On the right-hand side, you see where people will come in, and they will, you know, they can talk to whoever's inside. And there's a nice piece of bulletproof glass there, or solid glass. It's a very, very, very small area. You can see if there's 1 or 2 people in there, there's no other area for anybody else to come in. Sometimes they actually will, you know, police officers will come out and try to talk to people within this area. After you leave that area, let's say you're bringing in a criminal or you're bringing in a person that just needs to talk about something that's happened. The next step, you walk around the corner, you're walking right past all of the administrative staff. So you're bringing in somebody that needs to be questioned right past the administrative staff. This is one of the issues that was brought up in safety of our own personnel. It's not the best thing to pass through the criminals, through to your interrogation room, past your administrative staff and all the other issues. So there's a layout in this building that's an issue. There are a number of other issues that lead to safety concerns, and I'm not going to go into the details of those. Marty, you want to add anything as we go along here?
The only thing I did want to bring up to you was in that number 34 by 2018, that's not just officers, that's including office staff as well. So I just want everybody to make sure that's not 34 officers, we're talking office staff included in that figure as well.
All right, thank you. The next picture here, Marty would want to talk to this one. This room is used by all of our patrol people. Can you talk to that for a second?
What you're looking at is what our patrol officers use as their patrol office area. If you look behind Officer Zemek, he's the one in the gray hair there. Those file cabinets, those are their mailboxes. That's where we put correspondence in their mailboxes, and the file cabinets are basically drawers that they use to hold their paperwork and so forth that they would need to hang on to for quite a while. We have right now 2 computers that the officers are able to use. One that the officer is using right now, John Warden's at. The other one is in this far left corner that you can't see. The problem we run into is when we have 2 or 3 officers, or actually 3 to 4 officers working at one time, we've only got 2 computers for them to use. There's not a lot of space. It's very cluttered. As you can tell, there's a lot of equipment sitting around on the desk area, a lot of paperwork that's sitting there that officers have to work around to get to use that space. So it's very confined. It's not, the picture makes it look bigger than it really is, but the space is very confined.
And I think one of the other points that I found interesting was that right now it shows 3 officers, but quite often there's more than that, trying to use the space, all of them writing reports, all of them trying to access the same information simultaneously. It's not like, and in the front you can see they're working on a officer sizing program to try to use smaller officers. You can see in the middle there. I'm just kidding, all right.
I think the other thing that needs to be brought up here is it looks bright down there, but it's not very bright. It's a basement, and it's quite dark in there. The camera obviously makes it look brighter than it really is.
The thing that was interesting to me when we looked at some of the other, I want to make a point here, is after we completed all the research, then we went back and looked at some of the original concepts for different fire layouts, different police layouts. I want to make that point up front is that we intentionally did the research before we looked at the work that had been done previously. That way, the research wasn't tainted by, at least from my perspective, wasn't tainted by any of the previous work or concepts that had been done. So this is moving on to the next one. Here, uh-oh, we lost it. We lost our presentation. Nate? Chad? What's that? We lost our presentation. Pardon?
Is it the cord or something? There is a plug underneath the engine.
No, unless, oh, there we go. Maybe that's what it was. Thank you. Technology. All right, up on the top here, you want to talk about what we're looking at here? We're looking at the...
Well, currently, we're taking a look up top there. That would be the men's locker room area. As you can see, there's not a lot of space inside the locker room. We use it for storage of a lot of our evidence collection items, along with a shop vac and some of the bags that our patrol officers use to carry their equipment from their squad car back to their lockers and so forth. The bottom two photos are in our garage area. The ones to the right would be where our squad cars are parked. We can currently park 5 squads in the garage area we have downstairs. The picture to your left there on the bottom is a cage area that would take up about the area of the 6th squad car. So we could have room for 6 down there, but we have this caged-in area for overflow of evidence that we need to keep secure.
And that's one of the things that we pointed out in our report, is that because the evidence can't be stored inside the building where it's actually protected, it is stored in the garage space. And the issue with the garage space is the temperature changes as the garage is open and closed during the winter. So although I think there's some refrigerators out there for things that need to be kept cold,
We have a refrigerator and a freezer, and we put items out there that are not as susceptible to temperature changes. However, as you can tell, that area is quite full. We do have a lot of items that are stored out there. We just have run out of space to put them anywhere else.
I found it interesting how long they actually have to keep some of this evidence. Some of it have to keep indefinitely, some has to be kept for many, many, many years. So the issue there is you can't have the case over and then throw out the evidence. It has to be kept longer than that.
Correct.
So whether it's on-site or off-site, there is a need for growing evidence space. It doesn't go away. Or storage. Oh, go ahead.
The picture on your right is our file storage. It's actually the old safe in the basement of City Hall. We had cleared it out and ended up having Public Works put these racks in so that we could store our file folders. These are old year case files that we have to hang on to in some cases indefinitely, some cases up to 7 years before we can destroy them. So we have cases up there from 2000 and some indefinitely. And as you can tell, we run out of room once we go from 1 year to the next, and the years that are going to be destroyed, like we have coming up this year, we just finished up one, is we take these file folders, these boxes, and we end up moving them into the woman's restroom, the locker room, and putting them in the shower area so that we can store them there so they can be disposed of. So that would open up more space for us to store the past year's equipment. On your left there, you'll see a picture. That is our, I believe that's our pre-evidence area.
Yeah.
That's where we would package evidence, and then we store it in those lockers that you see on the left side of that picture. There's no pass-through. That's a lock system, so we put them in there, we lock them up, and then our evidence technicians will come and take them out of the locker and then put them in the evidence room, which is just out of view there.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me take a picture of that for some silly reason.
You're not allowed in there. The picture on the right is looking down the hallway, past my office down to the end, I believe towards from the safe area looking up towards the main entrance. As you can tell, the hallways are very narrow. The picture on the top is another picture of the garage space looking at the cage that we have out there.
I think the reason I took this one is this is the hallway that anybody who was being brought in for questioning would pass through. So you pass through the administrative area, you pass by the sergeant's area, or the patrol sergeant's area, you pass the evidence lockers before you actually get to the interrogation room.
The other thing is if you see those bulletin boards that are up in the hallway, we put a lot of material up there for review for the officers that sometimes is confidential, just so that they're aware of it, and now we have to bring people through this area and try to keep them from looking up at the bulletin board as they're going by. So it is quite cumbersome to have people come in there, but that's the only way we can go half the time.
So my point in putting all the pictures together was to give the council here, and anybody else who's looking at it, more of a tactical feeling, an idea of the space we're talking about. Since 2000, the police department is operating with about 4,700 square feet of office and garage space. In 2000, the department needed about 780 square feet of additional space. This is, we went back to 2000 and I asked Marty to look at how did things operate back then. If you had, what was double stacked, what was triple stacked, what additional space was being double used back then. Then we could use that number and do some projections to say, okay, if we were actually not quite enough space then, 780 square feet, you can kind of work without. But then what happens as you don't change the amount of space? 5 years, in 5 years, 5 years from now, we figured the facility need about 12,000 square feet of storage and evidence. The garage space, you can see it there. In 10 years, we're looking at somewhere around 18,000 square feet. Now, recognize that this is done by our committee using basic statistical projections to figure out where are we now, what kind of growth did we perceive, where did we feel we were comfortable as a department, and what happens as we add more support systems. I think my next slide goes into the next department. Do you have? Yeah, it does. I'll get to recommendations in a second. We're going to go through each department and I'll try to speed these up. He's not here anyhow, is he? All right, EMS. EMS, since 2000, the primary space available has not increased. Additional space has been used at the hospital and other off-site locations, but mainly the hospital. Population service has gone from 19,000 to over 25,000. And it looks like our population service will grow to about 36,000. Now remember, their population service is greater than the police department. Police department is the city itself. EMS and fire cover police and other areas outside the city. Calls to service has gone from 840 to 1,800 and will increase to about 3,400. EMS personnel has increased from 0 to 6, and they figure about 16. Our 10,000 word pictures here. If you look down the side of the upper left-hand corner, that's our rescue truck, I believe. Jim, I don't know if you can speak to that or not. That's a rescue truck. You can see the concern here is the amount of equipment and aisle space. On the left-hand side, they've doubled up the use of the lockers, over and under kind of lockers instead of full-size lockers for each volunteer. They have issues on the left. You can see on the right here, they have issues with space. Lower left-hand side again shows more of the space issues, and then the lower right-hand side, there was a discussion about it's difficult when the ambulance is inside the garage, they can't get the gurney out. I mean, that's how tight these things are together inside the garage. Here's another shot up the aisleway. And on the right-hand side is where they keep a lot of their medical supplies. This is actually the showers for the fire hall. This is where all the medical supplies for EMS are stored. So in many cases, like Marty pointed out, certain facilities they've given them up. They're not using the
the shower spaces in the fire hall. They're not using the shower spaces downstairs because although in normal operations there are times that you need them, they've used those for other purposes, in most cases storage. Current square footage allocated to EMS, both onsite and offsite, is about 4,200. 1,500 of that is at the hospital. 5 years, the service will need about 5,700 square feet, and in 10 years, about 6,800 square feet based on our projections. Fire department. I know I'm over my 15 minutes here, sorry.
You take all the time you want.
Okay. Fire department. Since 2000, the primary space, again, has not increased for the fire department. Population has increased from 19,000 to 25,000. We expect it to be 36,000. Calls to service has gone from 232 to 479, and we think by 2018 will be about 858 calls. Number of full-time personnel has gone from 0, and if we end up going to a full-time fire response unit, we're looking at maybe 11 by 2018. There's been a lot of discussion about how long can you continue to maintain a volunteer force, and at what point do you switch over. If we switch over, Jim is projecting that we'll need about 11 full-time people by 2018. Number of volunteers has increased from 34 to 40, and we project it'll even increase to 50. Even with the full-time staff, the volunteers are still necessary. These, Jim, you want to speak to these, a little bit of what those show? The upper right hand, that's the corner where I believe it's our tanker is parked. Note there's not a lot of room, aisle space between the pillars, and we have equipment stacked in that right aisle. There's not a lot of room to navigate through there, and some trip hazards and stuff. It's as neat as it can be. The one on the left, or the one on the left is where our tanker is parked. The one on the right is where our gear rack storage is, or most of our gear rack storage is. That's the main aisle. Everybody comes in and out of the building pretty much. We do have, going back to the left one, there is gear rack storage, portable units that we have stacked in the aisle right now that we're using. The lower left, that's looking the opposite direction. We do have vehicles double stacked in there. I mean, one behind the other. And that's looking down the aisle the opposite way. To the right, the lower right is our, where we have our boats stored, and the table that's there is where we do our SCBA maintenance. There's not a lot of room around the table between the back of that fire apparatus, the table, and then the boats on the other side. Because in front of the boats, we have to maintain a walk aisle between the little workbench there, and it's kind of the main aisle to the bathroom. The one of the reasons I took the picture in the lower right-hand corner, if today there was a call out to the river, or someplace you need a boat, you want to talk about the process to get that thing out of there? We had to double stack. We have 2 inflatable boats. We had to double stack them in order to maintain them, to be able to be inside. And it's a little difficult. You have to unload the bottom boat very carefully without whacking your head on the support bars. And then the top boat, you have to lift on there by hand and get down off the top. So it's somewhat of a delay in deployment to those. This is another, looking up the, I think it's the east side aisle. That'd be our east aisle there. There's our breathing air compressor, the white thing that you see there, that's our breathing air compressor. And to the left of that is our hazmat trailer, and then the freezer, and that aisle is sideways. You gotta walk down that aisle sideways to get through there. Current square footage, including on-site and off-site storage, is about 8827. The review of the needs of the 2,000 indicates that the square footage at the in 2000, Jim felt that we were about 10% less than what we needed back then, giving us our baseline for calculating forward. 5 years from now, the fire department, we believe, will need about 13,000 square feet, and in 10 years, about 15,000 square feet. The fire hall itself right now is about 10,000, including fire and EMS together. So the summary, and currently all three departments are not only pressed for space, but are double and triple stacking equipment to make the areas they're living with inhabitable, okay, or workable. The most pressing need is for the police department. Marty feels that that if he had basically double the amount of space he has now, he would then be able to provide the number of lockers that he needs for the employees. He would be able to provide working spaces and, you know, office working kind of spaces or cubicle spaces for those people that need them. He would be able to bring a lot of our equipment that currently sits out on the mat, I was going to say tarmac, but sits out on the apron, thank you, back inside will be more protected. One of the issues we have is in all three departments with equipment sitting outside and not being maintained and not being protected. Well, not maintained, but, you know, exposed to the elements is a question for us as a city. How well do we maintain those vehicles when they sit outside? To operate the EMS department efficiently, and when I say unstack the equipment, is about 20% more space. And this is right today, these needs that we have today. The fire department needs about 30% more space. And in all these cases is to unblock aisles to get that OSHA standard 3-foot aisle that we need to have between vehicles, between spaces, to make the space safe for emergency operations. Jim, would you like to add anything to that as far as before you or the EMS?
We are getting by, but it is a little inefficient to maneuver around the facilities. More space would certainly be a good deal, and you know, we do have a few minor potential hazards as far as exiting the building with the aisles that narrow and that kind of thing.
Okay. In summary, all three departments are operating, providing service in a timely manner. This is one point I wanted to make, is that the departments are getting the service out the door. There are a couple of areas in which, like the double stack boats, that could immediately impact service. But they are working with what we've given them for space, and they are delivering service. I wanted to make sure that everybody was very clear about that. But then looking towards now into the future, what space do we provide to these service organizations to provide us service? All right, so one of our recommendations is that we want the City Council to recognize that there is a significant need for space between, you know, the calculations and the pictures that you've seen, and if you visited these three facilities, you know that there is a need for space. That's the first thing I want to, you know, for the council to be aware of. I'd like for the City Council to recognize, because of this space need, to recognize the need for a new facility. And this new facility would house EMS and police. This is our concept. EMS, police, as well as the main offices and a substation for our fire department is a concept. But what we'd like to recommend to council to move forward is to work up a statement of work and a request for proposal to hire an outside consultant that specializes in safety facilities to do a couple of things. We'd like them to validate the findings of our report. We are an internal due diligence team made up of myself with assistance from the chiefs, and we believe, based on what we've seen, that this is the direction we need to go. We need to be looking at a solution that is a new facility solution. We would like to have verification from an outside source and then taking that a step further, if their findings agree with our findings, we'd like them to do a facility layout with cost estimates. What is a facility like we're thinking about, like this team is thinking about, What is it going to cost us? And then based on that time frame, we still have the immediate issues of space problems. If we're looking at and saying, well, yep, we can't, new facility is not the direction we're going to go, we can't afford the facility, we have a different direction, what's the timeliness of a solution that helps us relieve the pressure in those three departments? Going back to my first point, I'd like the council to recognize that we do have a serious space need that needs to be resolved. If we, for the statement of work and the RFP, the idea then it would be to explore federal grants, other funding sources. There are some other things out there that we could put into this statement of work to ask this outside consultant to do. So, in summary, where do we choose to go from here? As a council, you've seen the issues that we had, and you've seen the details in your packet. That's our presentation and our recommendations.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Lee, for all of the time that you put in on that study, and also the Chief Fry and Chief Jensen that are here tonight, and Eric, who've done a lot of work.
Yes, absolutely.
I think we can have some discussion about this report. There's going to be a couple of options. You made some recommendations in here. I'm not certain that it's appropriate for any action to happen on those tonight. In fact, probably about the only thing that'd be appropriate tonight would be to accept your report and place it on file or some language like that. One of my questions is about the population. And I heard you mention 36,000 population in 10 years for the EMS. But what did you use for population in 10 years for the police department?
Population growth numbers provided by Jenny Darnold.
That's the source, but I'm asking what the number was. Is it in here?
Oh, I'm sorry, for what?
15,000 something for the city of Hudson.
It was 15,000?
15.6, I think was there. Yes, you're right. That's what I remember seeing.
Yeah.
15,692.
To growing to 15,600. Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Lee?
One brief one. Does this, or did you guys folks address the existing facilities that we do have? Or is that what?
In the report in options, there's actually 4 different options that are outlined, and I didn't go into all of them here. We looked at the current fire stations, options at the fire station. We looked at the city hall here, options at city hall, and we have pros and cons in here for which of those things would work. The concept of a new facility was our number 1 option, because the other options that we came up with didn't solve the problem overall. It got us, maybe a couple of years of solution, but it didn't solve some of the other issues, such as the interdepartmental communication issues. Other than space, there are other pieces of this that are detailed in the report that talk about how do you solve that, well, the interdepartmental communication. You can read the details in there. But yeah, we did look at the other facilities and said that there are some options there, but they create other problems and don't solve all the problems that we currently have.
Was your question about existing city-owned facilities,
Yeah,
such
and what
as
we're
the
gonna do-
911 4th Street Municipal Building,
Yeah.
that type of thing?
And what we're gonna do with all the utilized property that we have to us? Just abandon all of it and then?
Well, I can speak to that. In the report here, we recommended that if a new facility is created, that it's a substation to the fire department, providing about 4,000 square feet to the fire department. They will need about 15,000 square feet, we figure, in 10 years. By allocating this entire facility here, the current fire station, to the fire department, and then the concept that there's now joint training facilities, we feel that 14,000 square feet, 10 here and 4 up there, would then solve the fire station issues. But that would not be abandoned.
The downstairs here would be open, but we also have the issue of possibly expanding city staff. We also have storage problems here, which could then be handled right here on site. Because I believe now we take a lot of paperwork
goes to the
off-site
library.
to the 911 4th Street building
Below the library.
that is hard to access, and if we had more space here, it could be stored here on site. So that, I don't believe that this emptying out the first floor here would actually ever go to waste.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be empty buildings.
And the 9/11 building would stay as is?
We didn't address the 9/11 building as an option because we don't know what the future of the library is.
Right.
As long as we're on that subject, though, I'll say that, you know, I've toured the municipal building twice, and on my second tour, I had the clerk and Jan were along. There are unused spaces in that building right now that aren't occupied, haven't been occupied, really had no designated use. There are also some pretty underutilized spaces, rooms that were once office space that are fairly underutilized storage space. When I see your pictures of how stacked up the storage is, and when I heard the crunch for storage here, my response was, come with me and I'll show you what's available at the municipal building. We took over one room down at the end of one hallway that's going to be converted into additional archival storage space that's not taking away space from anyone right now. It's going to alleviate some of the file crunch from the second and third floor of this building. And there's really no reason why we couldn't alleviate some of that on a short-term basis. As soon as you're ready to move file boxes, we can find a place to give you a secure storage in the municipal building. May not be perfectly convenient for you, but it doesn't have to be, you know, in a shower stall somewhere. End of comment. Other questions? Would you like to accept this and place it on file? Do you have any action, or you want to just take it for information purposes only?
Move to accept and place on file.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to take a hard look at this and decide our course of action. I think we're, again, we get into the situation where we can build a building. Now, how are we going to operate it with our operating expenses? And that's always the $98 question in a budget that allows us a 2% increase. So I think, decisions have to be made. I think we're talking about a library increase in operating budget from $600,000 to $1,000,001 as a joint library issue. I think we have to make some decisions. What's a priority for the city council? Is it space for our police and our fire? Because I'm not sure that we can do both or all three. So we need to make those decisions. We don't have to do them right away, but I think we need to talk about them. And I think we have to keep this on the front burner. Because the problem isn't going to go away, especially the space issues for our police and fire and EMS.
I don't disagree with you on that. I'll make you 2 points. One is kind of put things in context of decisions that the council has made.
Yep.
In our financial plan, we have established I wouldn't say a decision's been made, but we've got what I call a place marker of $5 million that's coming out of the closure of the TID district that we could, in the next year, build a building, $5 million cost, without an increase in taxes. That could be done. That's a decision that we will make when we come to it, but this could be part of the process. There's that. The issue with the library is, and it's an ongoing thing, I don't think anyone knows exactly how that will come out. Once upon a time, I had suggested that we could conceivably share that building with the library, but support for that proposal has been weak amongst the Library Foundation, the library board. They'd like to try to put the deal together, taking the whole building over there.
Can I comment on
Yeah.
that? One of the issues you'll find in the report is the location. The fire department currently, their ISO coverage, if I get this correct, there's ISO coverage, which means the response, the number of miles that is within the 5-mile radius of the current fire station is about 75% of the current service area. By putting in a substation out a little bit for, like Carmichael and Vine, or somewhere along the Carmichael corridor, or somewhere out there, they then actually, both them and EMS now cover almost 95% of their coverage area is within that 5-mile circle. So response times to those areas becomes much faster. In discussing this location, or a location somewhere in there with the police, fire, and EMS, all three of them said this would improve our service, as well as our, for the police, access to the government center, for the fire, access to a larger area, for EMS, quicker access to. So there are some additional comments in here about not only the substation relieving space, but also improving response times and solving some of these other problems.
Correct, which, the NMC building probably wouldn't enhance response times from any of the public safety services.
Right.
I'm not thinking it would. So with that in mind, and just to kind of go back to Alan's comment about, can we do both? Can we do the library, or do we have to do this and we need to get a direction? One of my last comments to our library ad hoc committee this week was to say that if the city decides to pursue this, and we're building a building in the range of 30 to 35,000 square feet or something like that, whatever it comes out to be, I tend to believe that we could add on a wing on that of 20,000 for a library at 20,000 square feet for a relatively small marginal cost. I'll wager you that our cost per square foot for that would be under $150 a square foot, as opposed to the $220 that we've been quoted for a new library. And there are lots of examples of joint municipal buildings like that that house multiple departments, and I mean, as close as the Baldwin Village Hall, they've got the library and the police department housed in 2 wings of one L-shaped building, and it has worked fine for them. So, that would get us in 20,000 square feet of brand new library for something like $3 million all in, brand new space. So the question, can you do both? Well, maybe you could do both. And one of the locations that everyone, and I think, I don't know if you talked about location in your committee.
In the report it does. I didn't
in the
have
report,
that presentation.
Getting to the eastern edges of city limits is probably part and parcel to enhancing those response times with the substation. There's a nod from the police department. And I know what the fire chief thinks about getting further to the east with fire trucks is it's going to shorten the time to many of the locations that they run. So that has us starting to talk about land to the east.
And getting back to my point that it's a fire department substation, not a replacement for the fire station.
But even if you had just one truck there, you'd have one truck faster to the fire.
No, we're talking 2, but yeah, that's the idea.
Other questions, comments, Lori?
Well, yeah, I'd just like to commend you guys for a lot of hard work. I sat in on some of the meetings and was just very impressed with all the data you guys pulled together. I guess what I would like to suggest is that maybe we can't act on it tonight, but that we would strongly consider their recommendation for bringing in a consultant sooner rather than later. I don't want to see this sit on the shelf for 6 months and our hands may get tied in other ways. I'd really like to see us pursue bringing someone in to validate or maybe steer us in a slightly different direction. So I would just like to suggest that for future action.
Can we take action such as that
I think you're better
tonight?
off.
We have to bring it back to the next meeting.
Well, all your agenda item says is final report from Ad Hoc Facilities Needs Committee. I mean, you discussed it, but it doesn't really give public notice on what the issues
So
are.
future agenda item.
We can do that. Are there other ideas, comments? Scott?
I believe we have a motion, and second pending before us now.
To approve to place on file, yes, you're right. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And your idea of bringing it back doesn't require a motion. Anything further from, let's see. That brings us to any alderperson. Any communications or items for future agendas other than Lori's suggestion?
I would like an item for a future agenda to reflect the work that we've done, the council has done recently on persons who are applicants for liquor licenses and persons who are applicants for direct seller permits, to not process that paperwork and take up staff time if they are in arrears in city taxes. I asked for in this agenda item previously, and I'll ask for it again, that we have a discussion item to discuss whether or not to authorize Catherine, our city attorney, to draft change to our city code so those persons who ask for variances from ordinances, who ask for conditional use permits, considerations from the city, follow the same restriction and be current in their taxes.
Any other alderperson? City attorney? City administrator?
Two quick items. I placed on your table tonight an update on the health insurance. We did get the contract finalized. Catherine worked on that. Dean signed it on Friday. I met with Deb and Mike today. We're started the process. They've already contacted potential providers. Early July, we will then start the process of getting the health information and get the ball rolling on that. And the budget process, when Betty gets back from her conference, I anticipate that'll be starting in July, starting to get the paperwork ready. So just to give you a heads up on that.
I think that does it.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.